My latest Power Play DVD has just been published, Attack with 1e4 Part 2. On this DVD I give recommendations for white against the Scandinavian, the Alekins, the Petrov, the Philidor, the Modern and the Piets. The DVD is roughly 5.5 hours long and is divided into short clips, roughly 10 minutes each in duration. Now, the DVD was only published a couple of days ago, and already it's been pointed out to me that I've made an omission on the DVD. Someone on my YouTube channel asked me whether I covered the Philidor counter Gambit, and I have to admit that I haven't covered that on the DVD. So let me put that right and give you a recommendation now. So e4. And this, of course, is the Philidor, and my recommendation is d4. And on the DVD, I look at, well, I was going to say all the decent alternatives here for black. For example, knight d7, knight f6, and of course taking on d4. But this is the Philidor counter Gambit. And, well, no one has ever played this against me, sadly. I wish they had. The last time I looked at this with any seriousness was when I was a kid, and I seem to recall that bishop c4 was the sort of known refutation then. But looking at the theory now, I think white can play practically any reasonable move here, and it's good for white. The move f5 just looks really bad to me, because it's opening up this dangerous diagonal, and this one too, actually. And I think if white keeps his head, he's going to be doing very well. But okay, you want a specific recommendation. Well, I'm not going to recommend bishop c4 here, actually. I think it's important when we play an opening to play something practical, so that, you know, when you get to the board, you don't have to, it's not sort of life and death. You don't have to remember the exact moves. You know, I think it's important to play something that's logical, that you're going to be able to remember at the board under pressure. So my recommendation here is the very simple move e takes f5. So white is a pawn up, that's the first thing. And if black recaptures that, then we simply take on e5 and white is a pawn up for nothing. Or if e takes d4, you take with the knight, and again, you're a pawn up for nothing. This is securely protected, and very soon after the bishop develops a new castle, you're going to be able to land a knight on the e6 square. So in this position, after e takes f5, black's next move is more or less forced. Black has to play e4. And now knight g5. Okay, all very logical. The knight was attacked, you move it, and now white has two threats. To take on e4 with the knight, when you're a clear pawn up, but also queen h5 check. So black's next move is very logical. Bishop takes f5. You can also play knight f6 there, actually, and it should transpose. Now, looking at my database, I noticed that there was a game between Charbonneau and Nakamura, played about 3 years ago, where white played f3 here and won a good game. And that's a decent move, but I prefer simple development here. So the knight comes out and you threaten this pawn. Very simple, logical development. And now d5 is possible, but then just f3, and this will probably transpose back to lines we're about to look at. So knight f6, again, logical move. The knight is developed and the pawn on e4 is defended. And here f3 for white. So a really simple continuation for white, nothing complicated at all. And well, I looked up some old theory. I looked up my Encyclopedia of Chess Openings, published in 1981, and Sozin, no less, assesses this position as being slightly better for white. I'm afraid I've got to disagree with that. There's nothing slight about white's advantage here. Let's look at black's options. Okay, what happens if pawn takes f3? Well, we take with the queen, and now you can see black's problems. The bishop is attacked, but also the pawn on b7. And if black defends this with the queen, defends both those with the queen, the bishop c4, and something is going to land on f7, one of these. And white has an absolutely crushing position already. Nothing complicated about it at all. Or bishop c8, well again that gets the bishop away from the threat and defends b7, but again bishop c4, completely crushing. And bishop takes c2, well you take on b7, and then knight e6 wins material. Or queen e7 check. Well, and now bishop c8 avoids both the threats, but the queen has put itself on a dreadful square. And, well, bishop c4 is threatened again, so let's say c6, and now bishop d2 and rook e1, and this is already totally crushing for white. Really simple. So after f3, taking on f3 is not advisable for black. Well, what about d5? Okay, well then we just take on e4. And again, bishop c4 is the problem. If pawn takes, then bishop c4 is already absolutely crushing for white. Something will land on f7, you castle, and it's all over. Or d5 takes on e4, knight takes. Well, again, we can take this, and bishop c4 comes again. This was actually played in a game where black played queen e7 here, but this didn't really improve matters after the check. Now if c6, then you just castle. Well, white's a piece up here actually. Let me just take you through one variation. I mean, this is just so easy to play. It's all done with threats, and here you can actually give up this bishop, and this forces checkmate with, well, queen c8 mate is threatened. There's also queen e6. So after bishop b5 check, bishop d7 was played. White took. Now black got back the piece. And here white took the pawn on e4 and was a clear pawn up. But it's probably even better to play check and queen here. And if castles, knight f7 wins an exchange. And if bishop g7, knight e6 is absolutely crushing, threatening c7 and preventing black's king from castling queenside. Winning position for white. So after f3, there is a huge problem. You know, what can black do here? I mean, maybe the best is to play. Well, let's have a look at queen e7 just very quickly. You take, and if knight here, knight d5, and this wins material. Take and play queen e2. I like this continuation because it's very logical. You know, white is just developing quickly and making simple threats, exploiting the pin on the e file. So after queen e7, take on e4. Well, let's say h6 instead. Bishop e2 is strong because if pawn takes, then you're just a pawn up for nothing, and black has a terrible position. So after this, bishop e2. Okay, let's suppose black knocks the bishop back. Knight h3 I like. And in this position, we'll just castle. White has a massive lead in development. And actually, it's going to be very difficult for black to bring his king to safety when the queen stands in the way like this. And of course, well, there's the open f-file. Let's see what happens if black tries to escape to the queen side. Well, bishop h5, I'm afraid it doesn't get there. And the king has to go to d8, and now bishop g5 is absolutely killing. And it's so easy for white to play. So, I mean, maybe the best that black has in this position is just to go e3 and give up the pawn. In fact, I don't think white should take this pawn straight away. I think it's better to play bishop d3 and just develop and only then take the pawn. Because after the exchange of bishops, then it could well be possible you're going to land a knight in on e6 before very long. So there you go. That's my recommendation against the Philidor counter gambit. Keep it simple, just take on f5.